Hi, I'm Page Laughlin.
I'm David Finn.
And this is our show, Ship Shape. We're standing next to Red State and Blue State, which are two of the earliest paintings within this exhibition. Blue State in particular was probably one of the first themes that I explored. It is based on an old photograph of a sailing ship that was my initial inspiration for the entire 3 years of work that comprise this show. They both are fairly similar paintings, but there are differences. When I started the series, inspired by this old photograph that I found, I started searching for more ships, thinking, why am I so compelled by this particular image? And as I started looking, I found ships everywhere. So it's a particular image that's fairly ubiquitous, but overlooked. So I like to examine the overlooked and see what I can pull out from that image. Often my titles refer somewhat tongue-in-cheek to certain things I'm thinking about during the process of painting. That being said, I don't have a particular message I'm sending. I do think of my titles and my paintings as being prompts, encouraging my audience to look a little bit more closely, think a little bit more deeply, and to consider what they bring to the artwork themselves. So one of the things you'll notice is, although the show comprises 14 paintings that all start from the theme of ship, the paintings actually have a lot of difference as you look carefully and move throughout the show. So I'm not just doing one thing over and over again. Each painting actually changes quite a bit. So my way of working, I often put a lot of paint down and take more paint off than I put down. So I really think of painting as being a process that's all about making mistakes and finding out how to fix them. So if we look at Dazzle, which is this painting here, when you stand back from the painting, the image of a ship sort of coalesces together, comes together. When you get closer, it starts fracturing and breaking apart. And if you come close to all my paintings, there's sort of paintings within paintings to explore and to find, and hopefully to trigger your desire to come back yet again and look at the painting longer and contemplate and go on a journey, set sail with me, if you will, to explore the artwork and what its potential meanings are. I use a lot of different tools in making my work. More of them are non-traditional art making tools. I do use brushes and palette knives. I really love working with credit cards. Credit cards are wonderful for painting. So there are a lot of different ways that I make a surface that's very rich and a surface that's very unexpected, both for me as the artist and you as the viewer. These paintings are all done initially on paper, on a French paper that is designed for oil painting. All the paintings are done in oil paint.
We really had never thought that we would do this, but Bram called us up and they came down to our studio and we put my ships in front of her paintings, and wow, they really looked great together. But believe it or not, we worked in parallel with each other for actually several years.
One of the things that's nice for us in seeing the exhibition is we're seeing things that we didn't even recognize back at our studios, where there are correspondences. Sometimes it's just a visual detail that is reflected in the other person's work.
In seeing the show put together, it really reveals both, how we are different, but then how there are many similarities to our work. This is Tofit/museum. It's actually one of the largest of these ships that I've made. It's really like a hunk just sitting there. And of course you can see that it's got some ruins on it. And I'll just point out that like all of the ships, it looks like it's painted black. I actually use a kind of tar that you use for driveway sealant. It's very thick, viscous, black material. And that's something that that kind of tar has been used in shipbuilding for a long, long time as a way of waterproofing and making ships solid against the elements. Tofit Museum is, I think it's one of these pieces that rewards really close looking. You start looking at it, you get in there, and you can see there are vessels inside the vessel, that is pots and urns and things like that. They're scattered about the ship. And there are a few figures in there that are worth exploring and taking a look at. It also is penetrated by a number of these holes in the hull. The title Tofit comes from a place near Jerusalem where Herodotus, the Greek historian, said that there were child sacrifices. So that term became used by archaeologists to apply to mostly Phoenician settlements across the Mediterranean. And I'm using that, and I'm creating this ship that is more like an archaeological ruin, but it also, it had some resonance with me when I saw images of Gaza. I used those images to help me construct the sort of ruins and a pathway through the ruins that you see here. The other part of the title, museum, has to do with the way all the little urns are stretched out all over the ship. And you can discover for yourself how that all comes together in this one piece. I've used the title Black Freighters for all of these works. It's very descriptive, and I think sort of some of even with the very, very large freighters that are being built today, they often have you can locate the place where there is cargo, you can locate the place where there's a bow and a stern, and then some kind of housing for crew and for communications and those kinds of things. So this ship has a title, Special Operations, and that should imply something that is going on that may not be exactly, may want to be kept undercover, because that's what's happening here. The entire vessel is covered. I'll point out that I think that when the Russians invaded Ukraine, they called it Special Operations. They didn't want to say that it was a war. They called it Special Operations. I think that's probably where I got this idea for the title, something that's covert, something that you don't know exactly what it is, but it is also right out there in front of you. So it's interesting one of the things that I find fascinating about this myself, it looks like it's just covered up with a piece of like black plastic that I threw over it. And in fact, somebody came up to me in the gallery and said, when are you going to uncover that so that we can see what's underneath it? Thinking it's just a tarp that I can just pull off. But in fact, the way this is constructed is there is a wooden hull underneath it. But I've just put a bunch of objects on there. I then covered it with saran wrap, and then I made a mold of that. And then I cast that mold with a kind of black polyurethane that is actually much thicker than a sheet of plastic. It just looks like a sheet of tarp or a sheet of plastic covering it up. And you'll see as you go around it that it drags in the water. It's so large, it looks very heavy. All of those things, I wanted it to look like it was, really, really covered up and stretched, and it was revealing some things that might look like armaments or some things that might want to be hidden. So this boat, Stateless, I chose the title because that idea of being outside of the state applies in many ways to ships that are on the open ocean. Anyway, this ship, Stateless, has lots of little figures. Lots of them are carrying luggage. And I took advantage of that to build those into sort of a group of people that are on the deck of this ship. There's a little sick bay area. There are people sitting at tables. And if you look around, you'll see they're coming from the back of the ship up a corridor and they're spilling onto the deck. There's also a little scene where there are people that could be performing for the group that's coming onto the deck. What's going on? There are a bunch of things going on. There are people also that are watching what the activities from behind a barrier. And there are a number of different interpretations. I think that refugees is one of them. So the idea of segregation is another one. Just some people being observers and not participating in the action. And then some people that are actually acting, and we're not sure if that's real or if it's imagined. All of those things are part of this story that I'm telling in this boat.
So one of the things David and I share in common in our artistic practice is an interest in community engagement and involvement. In working on the ship theme in the paintings, I often look to language as a source of understanding. And in looking and searching for the images of ships, I realized ships are around us all the time, not only visually, but also verbally. And ship as a suffix is a condition or state of being. So if we think about friendship or citizenship, censorship, ships are everywhere. So that became a prompt for me to think about making a community engagement project that is also part of this exhibition at Brom. Partnering with Brom, we have worked to make ships in a bottle or messages in a bottle. The image, if you will, works both ways, where we have slips of paper and glass bottles that we ask community members to consider the most important ship in their life, whether it be friendship, ownership, what have you, and to write about that and leave a message in the bottle. Community members have now worked with Brom to help build a net, and we're hanging all the bottles from the community-made net. And at the end of the show, we hope people will want to take a message in the bottle home with them. If you think about it, we set sail with relationships and friendships, and they carry us through life. Some ships are more like anchors, or we set anchors from them, either holding us back or helping to keep us stable.
And I'll also sort of point out that, the metaphor that we're working with of being at sea, at sea has certain kinds of meanings and connotations. Those of us that are living on the land all the time don't always think we are at sea, but in a way in life we often are. And I think there's actually a Buddhist saying that life is like stepping onto a boat that is going to sink, that is going to sink as well. So that sense of instability is something that we choose to ignore a lot, but it's these ships sort of is one of the touch points for what life is like.